Well, Leo, happy International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia.
Thank you very much, and to you.
So we're coming together today to make a small announcement, but not insignificant, regarding Colors Caribbean, which is now under your management, and
That's right.
regarding the new nonprofit organization that I'm busy setting up here in the UK. I will say more about that at a later date, but I wanted to take some time to tell the public what you are working on through Colors Caribbean and speak a little more about what I'll be working on over here in the UK, but also in tandem with Colors.
Thank you, Billie. Yeah, Color is going through a refocusing of uh, its mission. We have aligned and created a coalition with important organizations in the Caribbean, and we're hoping to add more organizations as we continue in our path to create what we refer to as the decolonization of the colonial laws in the Caribbean. The organizations that have come together towards this aim at the moment are ILGA NAC, ICAID, Carigras, Out Bermuda, and Unibam from Belize. And we are hoping that more organizations will join us, not necessarily only with regard to LGBT matters in the region, but with regard to other areas where minorities are suffering as a consequence of the heritage of colonial legislation that we have still enforced in the Caribbean, and that in some jurisdictions those laws cannot be the subject of court challenges as a consequence of the way in which some constitutions in the Caribbean region has been construed and interpreted by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council that sits in London and still remains the final court of appeal for some jurisdictions in the region.
That's right. And today is especially significant because I think it's something like 63 UN member states still criminalize same-sex activity. Um, And that is, largely a result of the colonial era laws that are still pervasive across much of the Caribbean, as well as other parts of the world. So this coalition you're forming is part of an effort that Colors Caribbean has been working on or working towards for years now, that um, my new nonprofit will be working on as well, which is, as you said, decolonizing the Caribbean, and ridding a lot of the territories and colonies there of these buggery laws that criminalize same-sex activity. So we wanted to highlight all of that today, especially given that it is the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Transphobia, to let people know, let the community know that we are working hard towards decriminalizing and decolonizing the LGBTQIA plus community of the Caribbean.
That is correct, and I think what is important is that this work has attracted very important support by very key institutions in the world. Uh, in some way, we have managed to recreate a transatlantic, network between the LGBTQI advocacy clinic at Harvard Law School in the United States that has been helping us with the legal analysis of this puzzle, just to put it mildly, and but also we're working with the Pro Bono Publico, which is a clinic that sits within the University of Oxford's Law Faculty in the United Kingdom, that are actually looking into the body of the iceberg under the surface of the water that are of laws that are being protected by this interpretation. Because, you very well said, the Baggery laws, so-called Baggery laws, colonial in essence, are one example of that. And the laws that have been normally litigated in court that have led to the Privy Council to come with this funny theory that the colonial legislation is above the constitution of some countries, uh, has been the mandatory death penalty. So it appears to the world that we're just talking about these two laws. But that's just the tip of an iceberg. And so the Oxford Law Faculty is doing at the moment is putting together the list of legislation in areas of family law, in areas of immigration, in areas of criminal law, and other areas of law, where there are dozens of laws that are actually in breach of fundamental rights, in breach of international obligation of those states, but where the judiciary has been, cut its hands to do its job, which is to make sure that the legislation that is enforced in those countries complies with the Bill of Rights, the fundamental rights of those jurisdictions. And that pruning has been done by the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council. And so what we have here is states where one of the three branches of government is unable, is handicapped to perform its job. And then that creates an imbalance that leads to violations of fundamental rights, which in other countries are easily addressed by the court when the parliament doesn't want to do anything. In some Caribbean regions, the violation continues and will continue in perpetuity unless something fundamental happens.
So can you speak a little bit as to why these laws exist in the first place, why they have existed for millennia, for something like 400 or 500 years, really, in certain parts of the Caribbean, and why they've been so difficult despite our best efforts as activists, as organizations, what have you, lawyers, despite our best efforts to dismantle them, to remove them from the books. Why do they persist to this day?
Well, the reason why they persist in some Caribbean countries today, I can't speak for the rest of the world, I can speak for the region where we are, which is the Caribbean region. The reason why they still remains on the statute book is very simple. There is no political will to repeal them, and British, at the point of decolonizing some jurisdictions, have actually provided this jurisdiction with a constitution that protects the colonial legislation that the British left behind, that they were actually, sanctioned and passed before independence, have left a constitutional clause for this nation that basically protect that legislation from being attacked in a court for breaching of the Bill of Rights of these new independent nations. The question is why? Well, there are different reasons why. They said that that is to facilitate the transition from colonial ruling into independence ruling. So the underlying issue there would have been a reasonable reason in that you didn't want the day after independence to have thousands of claims of unconstitutionality being brought to the attention of the core of the new independent nations, because that will actually create a bottleneck. It would have created a lot of legal uncertainty. It's understandable that as a transitional uh, tool, it was important to provide the new independent nations with a period of a few years for them to settle in the new regime and then continue as any normal country in the world does, with three branches of government operating equally with different competence, fully doing their job. The executive administrates, the parliament legislates, and the court makes sure that the laws and the actions of the executive and the laws passed by the parliament complies with the constitution. And where they don't, they eliminate those laws. That is how the world, since the French Revolution and the American Revolution, has worked. There's no rocket science. 25 years ago, the British have construed this clause to be a permanent clause, to be a permanent feature. And so the laws passed by Henry VIII, the laws passed by Queen Victoria, they can be touched by the independent judges of these nations, which is absolutely mind blowing because what we have is a situation where the same law, the same colonial law, the day before independence could have been declared unconstitutional under the colonial regime
Mm.
and by a court in these colonial jurisdictions. The day after independence, the court of the independent nation, probably the same judge, had no longer the power to declare that law unconstitutional. And this is what, it could have made sense during a period of a transitional period of a couple of years, but not a quarter of a century later, or sorry, half a century later since independence.
Yeah.
Uh, and this is where the problem lies. Why laws like the battery laws that were brought by the British, I mean, there's no debate about that, at least in the Caribbean region, now somehow in some jurisdictions are untouchable. There's no political drive to change them, and the judiciary has been basically made unable to touch any colonial legislation, including the boundary laws.
This is the savings clause you're referring to, right?
I am technically, they are referred to the savings clause. I just
Mm.
didn't use the technical name. I'm just trying to explain for the people who,
Right.
lawyers or not involved in the political this debate of these matters. But that is correct. The technical name is the savings clause. Yeah.
So in summary, many of the Caribbean nations that were formerly under British rule, despite um, claiming independence some 5 decades ago in the 1960s for many of them, most of them, I believe. Um, the UK remains the head of state, and or some of them still retain the UK Privy Council as the final court of appeal, as you said, right? So, despite whatever changes the community might want, the local governments might want, um, they're unable to do anything to alter those certain aspects of the Constitution, of the law, because of the savings clause. Yes?
That is correct.
Yeah. So, and that is what you and I are hoping to tackle. You now in the Cayman Islands, me here in the United Kingdom, working together in a variety of ways, but also there's a lot of overlap between the work you're doing and the work I'm doing, and will continue to do in this
That is,
field.
I'm very pleased that you are always, creating an organization that, gathers and in many respects represent and fight for the protection of so many people of colors in the diaspora, which have actually moved to the United Kingdom. This is a very important step in the right direction that you have taken, and I think is fundamental, because I think it's going to complement very nicely the work that you as founder and president of Colors Caribbean have done in the region.
Mm.
Uh, your life has moved to a different territory, and you are now in so to speak the mother country that at one point was ruling most of the region in this side of the world, in the Caribbean. And so it is a very important step in the right direction, because that is the other side of the coin, the side of the same problem. The colonialism that still we are suffering in the Caribbean region, in many respects, you have seen and you have experienced an important level of repercussions for those moving into the UK who belongs to the British family, so to speak, and now back in the UK, in motherland. They experience serious, issues, and I think it's very important to have an organization to represent them. So, in that regards, I only can congratulate you, Billie, for the courage and the strength of continue your work under, a different hat, but it is the same hat, the other side, from my perspective.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And it's an honor to pass the torch to you, for you to take over the management of Colors Caribbean, continue the work we've been doing in the region there. But as you touched on already, I think it's important for people to understand that the United Kingdom has more control over the Caribbean than just the British overseas territories. Again, we just highlighted how UK remains head of state for places like Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago,
Mm,
like
yeah, Trinidad and Tobago is a republic. It has been
sorry,
since '96, which makes things even more mind-blowing for the
yeah,
observer, right? I mean, they got rid of the crown,
uh-huh,
but in the judiciary.
they're not, that's right.
I mean, I guess this is this is I think your mistake there is good because it allows me to add one more point here. One, I mean, I guess the question would be why Trinidad and Tobago is so embracing the British judiciary. One of the three branches of government remains in the hand. The apex core of that branch remains in the hand of the colonial master. Why is that? I mean, they got rid of the crown, right?
Mm,
Which is symbolic. I mean, you saw probably in the news over the last 12 or 18 months, regions in the world like Jamaica, for instance, the huge political debates about returning another crown. But
mm,
nobody is just, I mean, with all due respect to King Charles, I mean, the crown is symbolic. I mean,
yeah,
the king is a muppet in Jamaica. I mean, yeah, I say this with all due respect, but just for people to understand. King Charles doesn't rule Jamaica anymore. He has no interference with Jamaica. There
yeah.
is absolutely no power exerted by the crown directly. But the judiciary of the United Kingdom still determines what the laws of Jamaica are. They still determine how the constitution needs to be enforced.
Mhm.
It actually says that some colonial legislation actually be attacked by uh, on grounds of unconstitutionality. And hence, the government acting on colonial legislation that are immune from judicial scrutiny can act with total impunity. And that, I think, is the reason why these governments are fighting and are just ignoring that they actually are not fully independent if one of the three branches of government remains in the hands of the colonial master. Uh, as a matter of international law, and this is one of the most important things that this coalition is trying to do, is to ascertain whether a country is independent when the colonial master retains one of the three branches of government. In this case, for all this jurisdiction has been the judiciary. We believe that that shouldn't be the case. We need to get an international court to look into this matter and make that assessment and issue a declaration with regard to that situation. But the practical implication of this is that in countries that actually still are forced to retain the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council as the apex court, some of those countries have interpretation, for because of the savings clause, that allows the governments to act with total impunity, absolute impunity, without judicial control, provided that they are actually, enforcing colonial legislation. If there, and so this is what we're trying to show here. That it's not just the Baggary law. It's not just the mandatory death sentence. That there is a whole legal web of laws which actually deals with the working, functioning machinery of the state on a daily basis, where the governments can act with total impunity and the court will have no power to interfere because of these funny constructions of the savings clause by the Privy Council in London. And so once we are able to compile, when we get from the Oxford faculty, the Bible of legislation protected and how that Bible of legislation is actually breaching human rights, then I think the world will realize that this is not just about executing someone that is a despisable person for the society, or killing the gays or putting the gays in prison because God forbid this is a sin that needs to be criminalized. It is not about that. This decolonization of the law coalition in the Caribbean is actually looking at something much deeper, more sinister, and we're hoping, to come with important news in the near future.
Okay. Well, we're excited to hear more and to learn more, and I'm excited to do more with you, as well as the work we're doing over here in the UK. Yeah, there's just a litany of issues that we're dealing with, as you said, not just the buggery laws, but all the things I'm hoping to do with this new organization based in the UK with regards to racism, misogyny, misogynoir, transphobia, and the like, and all the issues that come with that, that are very much not even tangentially related, but directly related to um, the colonial era laws that we're still grappling with in the Caribbean. So I think it's important for us to establish a stronghold here in the UK. This is where all of this started anyway. So it's vital for us to have a presence here, have a voice here. In fact, I was just at Westminster, earlier this week with Jason Jones speaking about a lot of these issues as well. Yeah, so the more visible we are together, I think the greater impact we can have. So thank you for this talk, Leo. It's been very illuminating.
Thank you very much for organizing this conversation such an important day as today. And yes, and I mean, you mentioned Jason Jones. I don't know whether you want to have a short chat about his case, or we shall leave that for another opportunity.
We can leave that for later. That there's a lot of ground to cover with that trial alone. So yeah, we'll put a pin in that, and we'll return to that. Pride Month is just around the corner anyway, so yeah, we'll be making a lot more noise about that and many other things. Very
Fantastic.
soon.
Well, lovely to see you, Billie. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we are in touch.
We'll see you soon in the UK then.
Bye.